Sorry about that. This episode got split in half because my camera died and I had to charge it. And just to tease you, I am airing the second part on a second day. Oh, and if you're wondering what I meant before when I said this episode is going to be in 2 parts, well, this is the second part. I'm not going to be reading the third part of the Barney trilogy, mainly because the second part's a little too long. Haha. I don't mind the background noise. Susan's watching FanFic Critic in the other room. The irony is that she's watching the episode where he does a drinking game. And so far in this episode, I've been drinking. And don't let the soda can deceive you. I have it laced with alcohol. So let's take place where we left off, shall we? Jeremy walked between Barney's arms and rested against his fat belly. The purple one wrapped firmly behind the boy, gently stroking his sandy hair. "I'm gonna kill you!" I think this is where we last left off. The next instant, the arms locked into the boy's neck, plump purple talons digging into his throat. Wait a minute. Since when does Barney have talons? The last I looked, his hands looked like mittens. Wow, those are really sharp talons there, buddy. Geez, you couldn't even scare a bug with those. Jeremy tried to scream, but the air was cut off and he could only thrash about wildly. Barney began giggling again, and as he proceeded to strangle the child, sang a lullaby. "I love you, you love me. Let me kill you, Jeremy. In another moment you'll be gone. Then my power will continue on." You know, for kids. Jeremy's tongue and eyes bulged tremendously, his feet kicking sporadically. Lights flashed before his eyes, and all he could see in between was the wide, moronic grin and lifeless eyes of the gigantic purple beast choking him. His lungs were bursting, and a roaring sound rushed through his ears. The next thing he knew, he was on the floor, gasping for air. He looked up and saw the fat, bloated beast curled next to him, moaning in pain. He must have kicked Barney in a good spot, to have rendered him powerless. Is this story implying to me that Barney the dinosaur has a penis and balls? Oh. Oh, thank you, story. Now you have that image embedded in my mind for all eternity. And now my face is not ceasing to stop twitching because of it. Let's see if I can continue to read. Jeremy began to crawl away when he noticed the loved one unsheathing a machete and scampering towards him. Jeremy quickly picked himself up and ran out the door. The loved one paused, then dropped the machete and tended to Barney, who was still withering on the floor in pain. Another time, perhaps. Okay, this twitching is getting on my nerves. I have to... Okay, let's continue. Jeremy ran blindly through the hallway. He'd been here a long time ago when adults still occupied the building. He and his parents had been here on a tour, and true to a child's memory, he could remember a back entrance that would take him to safety. Hopefully. Behind him he heard the muffled cries of loved ones who were obviously chasing him. He knew immediately that he could outrun them all. When he tried the back lock, Jeremy found it to be open. He flung the door and ran out onto a back terrace. Through the darkness he ran across an odd, lumpy surface. It was almost like he was running on a field covered with cantaloupes. It wasn't until he got to the far edge of the surface that he began to realize what the surface was. They were heads. Why? You all know how much I dislike Barney. And you all know how much I wouldn't mind seeing him get killed. But this is just too much. Barney's not a killer. He's just a stupid dinosaur. He does not sever the heads of children. And he does not brainwash children to kill their parents. What the freaking be? Let's continue. Jeremy had never seen a more unholy, dark sight. In the silver rays of the moon above, Jeremy looked upon the hundreds of skulls that littered the terrace area. He gaped dumbfounded at the scene and kept running and running until he had cleared the last head by a wide distance. He was now in the ruins of a city, empty and quiet like a tomb. Jeremy looked back at the sinister silhouette of the Capitol building and wondered how soon Barney and the loved ones would be out, searching for him. He began to fear for his sister Fran and wondered what special gift she had been given by Baby Bop. All the time, his mind raced back to what he had seen crudely scrawled onto each head, and of his own age, the age of impending adulthood, 13. Why do they consider 13-year-olds as approaching adulthood? I mean, maybe that's when you start puberty, but no, some people start puberty before 13. I started before that age. I was 12. I think I had just turned 12. No, actually, you know what? I think I was even developing even before that. So that doesn't make any sense. And you know, even if you're starting to develop and you hit puberty, you're still a child at heart. It would make more sense if it was like 15 or 16, or possibly if you want to really push the envelope when they're 18. Because that's when they are adults. But I digress. Let's just continue. The rain plodded steadily down the streets and alleys, and Jeremy learned for the first time that it was what it was to truly be alone. He reclined on a pile of dusty blankets next to a short candle that provided the only light in the abandoned warehouse. Shattered glass covered the floor, and through the gutted ceiling Jeremy could see the damaged blackened beams that supported the high walls. It was his third week away from the caverns, and he wondered if he was even a special friend anymore. Of all the times he'd been betrayed by friends, the last one he suspected of doing it to him was Barney. Barney, who took him, his sister, and his best friend up to his beautiful lair to sing, to dance, to receive a special gift. It was all a horrifying lie. Barney had taken Fran away, left in the company of Baby Bop. He had killed Cameron with a blow to the head with a machete, and he had tried to kill Jeremy by locking his arms around the throat, still wearing his idiotic grin and giggling. All of this just because 3 children turned 13. Jeremy listened to the rain dance upon the pavement, which was drenched with filth and rubble. It was only some years ago that the adults frequented the streets, going about their way to work. Now it was still. Jeremy could not break the stillness, for were he to yell or sing or cry, it could bring about the attention of the loved ones. Many times Jeremy had spied them shuffling about the ruins of the city, looking for him, offering Barney dolls with one hand while clutching a torch with the other. They came mostly at night, and all Jeremy could see of them were their cloaked, squat bodies clad in purple and green. Jeremy prayed they would go away. Jeremy also feared the bad ones. It had been so long ago since he'd seen an adult, but he remembered the stories Barney and Baby Bob told him, how they liked to pull the hair of children and hit them without reason. It was this reason that all adults were to be shunned, if not destroyed. Jeremy prayed they would go away soon. So Barney has qualms with, parents hitting their children, like spanking them and stuff, yet he has no problem with killing children. Sorry, I think I'd take a spanking any day than having my head cut off just for turning 13. He was surprised that he had lasted as long as he did. For a while he was alone. He managed to find decent shelter and other staples, mostly from ransacked buildings and stores. He dared not to sleep in the same place for more than once, lest he be found. He had come back to a few places he'd been before, only to sense that the loved ones, or someone, had been there too. Now he lay atop a stack of ragged blankets, wishing he still had his Barney doll. For some inexplicable reason, he missed the fat, bouncy dinosaur. Why? Why would you miss him? He tried to kill you, you fucking idiot! The very creature that killed his friend and abducted his sister still had some emotional control over him, and it scared Jeremy. Well, at least it scared him. At night he could still hear the Barney love song playing over and over again until he broke down in tears. The chubby purple beast was the first creature that ever made him feel truly loved. I love you, you love me, we're a happy family with a great big hug and a kiss from me to you. Won't you say you love me too? Even though I'm trying to kill you and I cut off your best friend's head and then I strangle you. Let's not get into that again. Then he envisioned the dead eyes and horrible laugh. Barney chuckled while he tightened his fingers around Jeremy's tender young neck. The relapse caused Jeremy to scream frantically, and his outburst lasted a full minute before he realized the danger he was putting himself into. When he did regain his composure, Jeremy blew out the candle and crouched by the window. He hoped to God, Barney, that no one heard him. Jeremy stared out in the vast darkness. As the rain continued to fall, for a few moments it looked like he was safe. Then, down a thick, crumbling alley, he saw a soft blur of light. This was soon followed by 2, maybe 3 others, and they began closing in. The loved ones had heard the scream, and were eagerly scrambling over to reclaim Jeremy. No, go away, muttered the boy. He was terrified. The huddle of cloaked creatures came closer and closer. Jeremy grabbed the candle and a dusty blanket. He couldn't leave out the front. They'd see him for sure. His eyes raced over the destroyed room when he noticed a flight of stairs. With some luck, it would lead to another building or even a fire escape. Jeremy scurried up the steps and watched from a dark pile of rubble. No more than a few minutes passed before the first loved one entered the building. It stood only about 4 feet high and gurgled to the others in a bizarre language. Soon it came to the pile of blankets where Jeremy had lain just shortly before, and felt the warmth. It nodded its head and giggled. With a wave of its hand, it motioned the other 3 loved ones to search the area. One immediately started up the steps towards where Jeremy was hiding. Jeremy knew that his best bet was to remain hidden and quiet. He stood behind a battered crate, breathless. He watched in horrified fascination as a loved one clumsily waddled up the stairs, waving its torch back and forth. As an offering, it carried a soft plush Barney doll in its other hand. The Barney doll was entrancing in an odd way. Why? And Jeremy's first impulse was to walk out and take it. No! But his instinct kept him away. Good boy! I'll hide here and maybe they'll be gone soon, thought Jeremy. He had never liked the loved ones anyway. As long as he could stay hidden, he would be safe. The loved one would look around briefly, then be gone. He was sure of it. All Jeremy had to do was stay still and wait. Jeremy! Jeremy! It's your good friend Barney! Are you in here? Jeremy froze. The voice had come from outside. Jeremy, I know you must be really mad at me, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I really, really am.
I hope that you and I could still be friends. Don't you know that I miss you? So does Fran. How could you leave your sister behind like that?
Jeremy watched as a tall, stocky silhouette came in. There was no denying who it was. Jeremy was suddenly filled with a tremendous urge to run out and embrace the fat purple dinosaur. You want to run out and embrace the thing that tried to kill you. That would be like if all the victims of Sweeney Todd suddenly came back to life and all wanted to give him a hug. I mean, why? Why would you want to hug something that tried to kill you? Well, let's hope this kid uses his brain and doesn't actually go. Stay hidden. Yeah. Please tell me he's not that stupid. Oh, man.
Gosh, Jeremy, it sure is dark and cold in here, not to mention damp.
Barney lit a torch and examined the lower level.
So much dust and broken glass. Wouldn't you like to come back home? Tonight we are having a lot of fun games and parties, and you're our guest of honor. I'll bet you'll have so much fun. There's ice cream and cake, plus lots of presents. In fact, if you come back to me right now, I'll make sure you get to lead all the games.
No, 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 thought Jeremy. He killed Cameron. He may have killed Fran. He'll probably kill you. Don't believe him. Barney lied once. He may do it again. Barney scratched his head and sat upon the blankets.
Jeremy, do you know why I'm out here tonight? Because I love you. You know, I never told this to you before, but you are my favorite friend in the whole wide world. That's why I want you back. I'm sorry I was so bad to you before, but I promise it will never happen again. But if you love me too, and I know you do, you'll come running out here right now and say for a great big kiss and hug.
Please tell me he doesn't do that in the next sentence. Barney, I missed you and I loved you too, cried Jeremy, coming out from behind the crate. If you die, Jeremy, it's all your fault. You're being stupid. Let's continue. Tears ran down the boy's cheeks, and when Barney saw him, the plum-colored lizard extended his arms in a loving gesture.
Well, that's wonderful,
exclaimed Barney.
Come on down, Jeremy. Let's hug.
Jeremy started to dash down the steps, but as he did, the loved one who had been at the top of the stairs suddenly lurched at the boy and grabbed him by the arm. The boy screamed and struggled.
Not now, you fool!
Bellowed the dinosaur. I'm sorry, I find it very hard to believe that Barney could be threatening. Jeremy shrieked and fought with the loved one, who had now dropped his torch and Barney doll and was trying to get both hands on the child. The rotting, partially destroyed floor rocked and keeled below them. Jeremy managed to get his foot behind the loved one and shoved hard. The next instant, the cloaked creature fell through the damp plaster wall and impaled itself on a sharp, jutting metal beam. Ow, talk about major heartburn. Its jagged razor edges slid through the loved one like a knife through butter. The scream was bestial and piercing. As thick, pink ochre rushed out of the loved one's wound, it spasmodically thrashed, clutching at the beam that emerged dead center of its chest. In its initial throes, it accidentally flung back its cloak, revealing the creature hidden within. Jeremy gasped at what he saw. The loved one was a horrid caricature, part human, part dinosaur. It was covered in sagging, pale red skin that was spotted with green and brown patches. Its eyes bulged with a serene, almost idiotic gaze. The teeth were smooth, perfect, and a creamy white in color. As the loved one struggled in desperation, its thick, lumbering tail lashed back and forth, crumbling the wood below it. Finally, with a low, raspy groan, its eyes rolled back and thin trickles of pink and orange fluid seeped down its snout, nostrils, and chin. It was dead.
Duh! Really? I never would have guessed that. Jeremy, don't be scared. Come back to me. I'll protect you.
Jeremy looked back at the purple beast. He sensed a certain falseness and anger within Barney and started shuffling back away from the stairs. The dinosaur edged near the steps and hesitated. Jeremy immediately realized that Barney was afraid to go any further. His massive bulk would probably cause him to fall through the rafters. Jeremy ran back towards the near half of the building. He immediately heard more scampering up the steps, and he knew the other loved ones were after him. He picked up a brick and hurled it at the closest one, and hit it square in the face. It growled in anger and reached under the folds of its cloak, producing a rusty hatchet. It flung it at Jeremy, who managed to duck in time. The blade whizzed by, embedding itself into a thick beam. Jeremy found a window and looked down. There was a fire escape. He promptly scrambled down and the loved one close behind. Several times they clutched for him, but he was too fast and agile for the creatures. At the bottom, he jumped off the landing and into a dumpster filled with paper and cardboard. He pulled himself out and tore down the street, the rain drizzling upon him. In the distance he heard a high-pitched plea. "Jeremy, come back! Don't you know that I love you? I love you so much that I want to kill you!" I mean, really. The next day, Jeremy found himself in a sporting goods store. He quickly went to the camping rations and tore open the flimsy packets of dry food and snacks. The boy ate voraciously and gained his senses. No way was he ever going back to being Barney's special friend. The events from last night certified that. The events of your friend being killed should have certified that, you freaking idiot. But now it was time to face up to the problem rather than keep running from it. He still had his sister Fran to consider. What if she was still alive? And what of his friends he left behind? Soon some of them would be turning 13 and facing the same fate as Cameron had, headless and forgotten. Jeremy knew that he'd have to come back to the caverns and face the purple beast. If he stayed out here, he'd most likely be hunted and killed by loved ones or even bad ones. It was a no-win situation either way. Best to go down fighting, as his uncle had once told him. Wait a minute, wouldn't his uncle be technically considered a bad one because he's an adult? I mean, after finding out that, Barney's a psychotic killer, you think he would have put two and two together saying, oh, well, maybe the adults aren't bad after all. Maybe the bad ones are really Barney and his army of weird hybrid human dinosaur freaks. Just saying. The sentiment burned in the young boy's mind, and he liked that. As Jeremy cleaned himself at a small puddle, he began wondering how he'd best prepare for another and possibly final encounter with Barney, Baby Bop, and the minions known as the Loved Ones. He seemed to recollect something about the sporting goods shop and walked back inside. He went near the back area and stopped. He found what he was looking for. On the walls were various rifles, shotguns, and hunting knives. Jeremy sucked in his breath and began removing them from their mountings. It was time to prepare. Chapter 3, Redemption. The last rays of sun crept under the horizon, immersing the devastated skyline in sullen darkness. A small figure clad in green cloak warily made its way towards the caverns, just below the main plaza of the structure once known as the White House. The cloak covered the figure very loosely, and several times the being had to stop and readjust the garment. If one were to inspect the figure closer, they would realize that the cloak had a huge gaping hole through the back of it, and that the wearer was a child barely in his teens. Were one to look beyond this, they would see the child brandish several broad hunting knives, a semi-automatic pistol, and a sawed-off shotgun. Jeremy Phillips had come to settle a score with a certain purple behemoth named Barney. Jeremy had trouble moving for several reasons. The cloak kept sagging and slipping, threatening to either trip him or reveal him to what he truly was and not a loved one. The weight of his munitions, I think it should say ammunitions, and armament grew increasingly heavier with each passing moment, causing the youth to pause for breath every few hundred yards. And the utter fear of apprehension of facing Barney and his evil minions was wreaking its toll on the boy. Jeremy felt he had no choice. It would either be him or countless other children before him, suffering the same fate Cameron had, or the unknown circumstances that Fran was now in. Jeremy felt ready as he could. He had fired a gun for the first time yesterday, killing a loved one in the process. He could see the squalid beast now, foraging in the city ruins, looking for him. He had woken to its gurgling noise and crawled out of hiding for a closer look. The loved one was alone and appeared to be lost or confused. Certainly it must be a trap, thought Jeremy. No loved one had ever traveled through the city alone before. But as time passed and he continued to watch it, he realized that it was indeed by itself. And by the time he realized this, the loved one sniffed the air, turned around, and saw Jeremy staring at it from the street. It gave an ungodly cry, pulled out a short, spiked club, and ran towards Jeremy. The next moment, Jeremy stood amidst the cloud of smoke and stinging vapor. His ears were ringing, and he felt the heavy weight of the pistol in his hand. His arm felt numb, and he began to realize what had just happened. He looked upon the ground and saw the twitching, corpulent body of the loved one. A moment later, its eyes sunk back into their sockets, and its entire body slumped. Jeremy had killed. Well, are you going to complete that thought or what? Have it say, Jeremy killed it. Not Jeremy killed. Or Jeremy had killed. I mean, whatever. It's... Jeremy could not understand why he felt no remorse. He remembered how he cried when his cat, Snooper, was euthanized at the veterinarian. How he cried when his parents left for vacation. How he cried when he couldn't play with his friends because it was past his bedtime. Those times were long ago, but Jeremy remembered them well, and he felt great sadness. Yet he felt no sadness for this wretched creature that lay still and oozing pasty pink blood out of its wound. Perhaps it was a good thing if Jeremy meant to do what he had planned that night. Presently, Jeremy neared the White House Plaza. He had kept careful track of the days and times. He knew that it was time for the imagination game. Just before bedtime, Barney would entertain the children by singing and playing, and the imagination game highlighted the entire evening. All of the children would be there, so would all the loved ones, to monitor the children and play the music. There was no better time to return. The first thing Jeremy had to do was find his twin sister, Fran. After so many weeks, he was curious to know what Baby Bop had done to her. As he once again crossed the wide field of skulls, he feared the worst. He dared not look at the decapitated heads for too long, lest he see Cameron's lying there, with his shattered glasses and frosting-smeared mouth. Off in the distance, Jeremy could hear the faint strains of music and laughter. The nighttime games and songs had begun. He climbed the back steps of the building and gently pried open one of the cold metal doors. He gazed down the dim, carpeted hall and walked in. He adjusted his cloak over his head. If so seen, he'd stand to be mistaken for a loved one. As expected, though, he saw no one. Jeremy remembered that at the 13th birthday celebration, Baby Bop had taken Fran outside the party room and down the hall somewhere. He figured that if it was a common route, maybe there would be more impression markings on the path. He eventually came to a well-worn, dirty trail of carpet and, cocking his pistol, followed it down a corridor around a passage that led to the cellar. He was surprised by what he saw. It was a paved, insulated cavern with smooth walls and brightly lit hallways. Flanking each hallway were sets of thick metal doors with wide square windows. Jeremy had sat silently and listened. From behind many of the doors were odd gurgling noises. Some were shrill cries and others were soft murmurs. Occasionally, a clanging of metal tools could be heard, and Jeremy observed a row of long tables on the far end of the hall, covered with bottles, linen, and blankets. Jeremy was in a nursery. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, please tell me this isn't going where I think it's going. It probably is. Oh my god, it probably is. Even the cat's protesting. Ugh. He cautiously made his way to one of the doors and peered in the window. He saw a young girl sleeping on a metal bed, surrounded by flowers and Barney dolls. Her stomach was enormously swollen. Oh my god. And Jeremy noticed movement within her abdomen. Something about the scene made him uncomfortably ill. He ran down the hall, peering in each door as he passed along them. Many of the rooms were the same, young teenage girls in varying degrees of pregnancy, yet with stomachs unnaturally huge for any normal child. Jeremy remembered his aunt who visited him at his house one day. She was almost ready to give birth, but her stomach was never as large as the girls he had seen in the basement. What were these people giving birth to? Jeremy saw tags on the doors, crudely written in crayon, names of the expectant mothers: Jennifer, Molly, Susan, Linda, Victoria, Talia, Beth, Brenda, Gretchen, Prudence, Sarah. Where was Fran? Jeremy ran down an adjoining corridor, one that had a metallic tinge in its smell and color. At the middle junction, he saw a brightly lit room, visible from a huge sheet of reinforced glass. Jeremy neared closer and peered in. The sight within made him shiver. Arranged in neat rows of clear acrylic cribs were newborn children. But they weren't any children as Jeremy knew. They were large, fat, gelatinous creatures with puggish snouts and large, sedated eyes. Their skin hung in great reddish folds, covered with green and brown spots and random patterns. Oh, Jiminy Cricket. From under their immense pale bellies hung thick scaly tails that whipped around clumsily. Most of the infants had already begun teething. Their teeth were smooth, creamy white, and perfectly cropped. The horrid mess fumbled in their cribs, chittering and gurgling, staring stupidly back at the terrified boy. Now Jeremy knew who the loved ones really were, and where they came from. He suppressed the desire to scream in terror and scampered down the hall, hoping to find Fran. He wasn't quite sure where one particular corridor would lead, but he followed it in a vain hope of finding his sister. At the end of it, he saw a door with a sign on it. The word on the sign was unknown to Jeremy, and it was scrawled clumsily with a red crayon. Morgue. Oh my... The smell was overpowering as Jeremy walked in. The room was enormous and painted in an institutional gray-blue. Only a few of the room's fluorescent overhead lights were on, and they flickered sporadically. Arranged in straight columns were gurneys with sheet-covered lumps upon them. Summoning up his courage, Jeremy lifted one of the sheets. Whoever it was, she had been dead for some time. The skin was a marbled white, and the eyes were glazed and dilated. She had long brown hair, and faint red freckles dotted her cheeks. As Jeremy looked further, he noticed a great recession in her stomach, and lifted the nightgown. What he saw made him violently ill. She had no stomach left, and there were signs that indicated something had burrowed its way out from within the cavity. This young woman had been the unfortunate mother of a loved one, like many others laid upon the cold sheet steel gurneys of the morgue. Ugh. Jeremy ran frantically down the corridor, forgetting that someone could hear him. He ran down another brightly lit hall, past another nursery. From behind the glass, Jeremy could hear the evil spawn gurgling and crying. His only wish was to escape from this unimaginable horror. He looked about the corridors in a complete state of dread and confusion. Jeremy, is that you? Jeremy froze. Slowly he turned around. It was Fran. She stood outside her door, clad in purple and green pajamas. She looked well kept and groomed. She smiled and ran towards him. Oh, Jeremy, I've missed you so much. Jeremy ran towards his sister and the two embraced. He was amazed at how well she looked. She stood back and stared at the guns and knives he carried. Jeremy, what is all that? Why are you back from China so soon? China? You mean they told you I went to China? Don't you know what happened to me? To Cameron? Barney told me you went away to China and that you would be back real soon, she replied. But look at me. Baby Bop and the loved ones have been giving me so much love and attention since my birthday. I just feel like a queen. Jeremy looked at his sister. She looked far cleaner and healthier than he did. He remembered the last words he heard Baby Bop tell Fran before leading her out of the Oval Office. It's every girl's dream come true. Jeremy swallowed hard and asked his sister, Fran, what is your special gift? Barney and Baby Bop are going to make me a mother, Fran replied joyfully. Her eyes sparkled with excitement and her whole body cringed with excitement. Well, repetitive is repetitive. Barney says it won't be much longer until I'm ready. Then they are going to put a specially created baby inside my body. Isn't that wonderful? Oh no, said Jeremy, his voice getting strained. No, Fran, they don't do it. Look, let me tell you what happens to those who bear children for Barney. They're dead. And their children? They aren't normal. They're monsters. We have to get you out of here, Fran. You'll die if you stay. Barney killed Cameron and he tried to kill me. He doesn't love you. He'll let you die. No, shrieked Fran, covering her ears. Don't tell me such things. Barney loves me and I'm going to be a happy mother. A happy mother, Jeremy. Jeremy reached for his sister. As he did, though, a green, scaly arm grabbed his shoulder. He was pulled behind and looked into the baby-like eyes of Barney's sinister companion, Baby Bop. For shame, Jeremy, making your sister cry like that. Don't you know it's not nice? Shame, 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 naughty Jeremy. Jeremy thrashed and hollered, but the green and pink dinosaur held on with uncanny strength. Baby Bop motioned Fran to return to her room, but the girl only wandered back halfway. Baby Bop latched both hands onto Jeremy's shoulders and shook him violently. Bad, bad Jeremy boy. No manners for sister. Wait till I get Barney down here. He'll teach you to be so bad. Do you know what happens to bad, bad boys? Do you? Jeremy stared in stunned horror at the squeaky-voiced reptile. He could only shake his head. They get the blade, they do. Bad boys get cut. Deep, deep, deep cut. And with a motion smooth and silent as the wind, Baby Bop pulled a thin, tapering dagger from under her blanket. She thrust it towards Jeremy's wrist. Jeremy caught her by the hand and the two fell upon the floor, struggling. She began giggling demonically, prying the dagger closer to Jeremy's tender young skin. From behind, Jeremy could hear his sister screaming. The next moment, he pulled his other arm free and unstrapped his bowie knife. He thrust it upward, meeting soft green flesh. Baby Bop gave a shrill cry and staggered back. The knife had lodged deep into her shoulder. She desperately tried to pull it out, screaming profanities and inaudible curses. Jeremy leveled his pistol at her and fired. The impact of the shot flung the green and pink dinosaur several feet backwards. The recoil knocked Jeremy flat against his back. When Jeremy recovered, Fran was kneeling over him. Jeremy! Jeremy! Are you okay? Jeremy slowly rose and stood, rubbing his arm. He looked down the hall at Baby Bop. The giggly dinosaur lay flat in a puddle of pinkish ooze, motionless. Jeremy, you killed Baby Bop. Jeremy put his arm gently on Fran's shoulder. Sis, you need to see something. The two of them hurriedly dashed past Baby Bop's body and over to the morgue and nurseries. Putting it mildly, Fran was mortified at what she saw. I can't believe it, she muttered. I was going to have one of those and die from it. That's not even the half of it, said Jeremy, reloading the pistol. He dumped the empty cartridges upon the floor and snapped the chamber back into place. Barney and Baby Bop have been killing older children for years. Their heads are in the back plaza. He must not want any of us growing into adults. Fran and Jeremy quickly made their way out of the cellar. At the foot of the stairs, Jeremy carefully aimed his gun at a set of pipe and cords lacing the ceiling. He fired several shots into them, causing steam and sparks to spray everywhere. The lights began to flicker madly, and the two children ran up the stairwell. Once at the main doorway, Jeremy and Fran pushed the furniture and other heavy items against the metal doors. Smoke and steam began seeping through the cracks. Beyond the doors, the children heard bestial screaming and clawing noises at the barricade. They hurried outside. Jeremy and Fran caught their breath upon exiting the building. He could tell his sister was shaken and scared. He put the gun back under his shirt and talked to her. "It's gonna be okay, sis. It's gonna be okay." "I want my parents back," she said. Her voice lacked emotion. She had been through enough. "What do we do now?" Jeremy looked at his sister, then back at the White House. Great plumes of flame poured from the building. The entire scene was bathed in a hellish glow of gold and fiery red. He remembered his shotgun and slid it out of his coat pocket. "I need to see Barney," he said. Off in the distance, he could hear the singing of children. Oh, man. How much longer is this? Okay. I know I said I was going to read the first two parts, but seeing this episode's already a two-parter, and this part itself is already closing in on being pretty long, I'm just going to have to leave it off there. You guys can hate me for it, but I really don't care because, that... Oh my God. It's well written. I can tell you that much. It is well written. It's just disturbing. And I know. A lot of people hate Barney the Dinosaur. I hate Barney the Dinosaur, but I highly doubt he would do something like this. Brainwashing children to kill their parents. Him brutally killing children when they reach the age of 13. And taking their decapitated heads and having them be out in a plaza. And then taking, young teenage girls and impregnating them with these weird, creepy, half-human, half-dinosaur beings? I can't say it's a bad fanfic. It's just disturbing. If you guys want to continue to read it, go right ahead, but I think I'm done. For my own sake, because, I have to admit, I came this close tonight, and even the alcohol wasn't helping. Well, I'm the FanFic Critic. I read it, you listen, I'm gonna go watch Nostalgia Critic with Susan.